The movie starts off in December 2004 with a letter. It is sent to Russell Core, a writer who studies wolf behavior. He is summoned to the village of Keelut, Alaska by Medora Sloan. Medora wants him to hunt down the wolves blamed for the disappearance of 3 small children, including her 6-year-old son, Bailey. She asks him to come and hunt down the wolf responsible for these savage acts, so that she may have something of the beast responsible for her son's passing, to show her husband. Core comes to Alaska and stays at her house. He unsuccessfully tries to convince her that it is not wolf behavior to kidnap children. He says that he has come to help her in any way he can. Medora looks grief-stricken. She tells him that she would have ended the thing's life herself, if only she could find it. As they chat, Core notices a strange mask that resembles a wolf hanging on her wall. Medora then warily warns him of the darkness present there, and of how dark it is outside the windows, and how dark it continues to get. What a strange woman. Core asks her if she has told her husband about their child's demise. She says that she is going to, but has not done it yet. Then she goes off to fetch boots for him, and they go out into snow-covered Alaska to identify the places where the children were taken. As they converse, Medora is bent on taking revenge on the wolves who took her child, as any other mother who lost her baby would. On the way back to the house, Medora tells him of a hot spring to the north of town, which is the only warm place she's ever known. She also tells him about her husband, who told her he would never leave her, but has left and is away fighting in the war. Poor Medora is extremely hurt and lonely. Later that night, Core wakes up to someone whispering, and sees Medora scrubbing her skin violently in the bath. He comes back to go to sleep, but Medora comes in wearing just a mask and nothing else. She then removes the wolf mask and lies down next to Core without saying a word and puts his hand on her neck. She forces his hand to choke her. Core, on the other hand, is shocked. He forcefully wrenches his hand away from her grasp. Overseas in Iraq, Medora's husband, Vernon, returns gunfire on a truck with insurgents. His companions call him a meat eater. Later, while stationed at a city checkpoint, Vernon discovers an American soldier on a local woman. Vernon wounds the culprit with a knife and hands the bloody weapon to the woman to take her revenge. As he leaves the house, he is ambushed and shot by a sniper, but survives. While he is airlifted away, Vernon mumbles Bailey's name. Back in Alaska, in the morning, Core sets off to track the wolves and meets Alanak, an old native woman, who tells him he is going the wrong way and that Medora knows evil. He retorts by saying that grief is what the poor woman knows. He then proceeds to hunt the wolves and finds the hot springs Medora mentioned in the process. He continues on to spot a pack of wolves eating their young cub. As he is stalking the pack, he accidentally slips and drops his rifle. The wolves instantly spot the intruder and run at him. He quickly picks up his rifle and positions himself. The wolves approach him and slow down. As the clock ticks, Core becomes unwilling to shoot them and returns back to Keelut. At the Sloan house, he finds Medora missing. He calls her name and searches around, only to discover Bailey's frozen, strangled body in the cellar. Poor Core is shaken. He comes running out, shouting for help, and all the people come to the Sloan house to discover the pitiful boy's body. The police come to investigate. Since Medora ran, everyone assumes that she must be the culprit behind her own son's demise. The police ask around for statements, and the entire native villagers claim that Medora is possessed by a wolf demon called a Turnak. Core meets the police chief, Donald Merriam, who asks him questions and requests for him to stick around, as he may have some more questions later. On the other side, Vernon has a flashback of a memory, where he sees his son talking to him near a riverbank. Vernon gives his son very strange and twisted advice. He tells him that it's okay to if it is necessary. The flashback ends, and Cheon, a father to another missing child, meets Vernon at the airport and takes his friend to the morgue to identify Bailey's body. They meet Police Chief Donald Merriam, Core, and other police officers. After Core and Merriam leave, Vernon puts bullets through the officers and the coroner's body, ending their lives coldly. He and Cheon then take Bailey's body and leave. Cheon builds a coffin, and Vernon buries his son in the snow after marking the body with his blood, which is a Yupik burial ritual. They come back, and Cheon tells Vernon to do what he wants to, and that he would buy him some time. Vernon goes off, taking the case files with him. After he reads and burns the case file, he visits Alanak, the elderly woman in the town. She tells him that she knows how he thinks that she is responsible for the tragedy that happened. She recalls the time when wolves had come before, and explains that she holds no responsibility for the current situation. She also tells him about the influenza that once spread throughout the village, taking the lives of many, with no place to bury them due to the frozen ground. Back in his room, Core calls his daughter's university where she teaches, and asks for her to call him back. Meanwhile, Merriam discovers the bodies of the officer and coroner, along with Bailey's missing body. He realizes that Vernon must be responsible for the deed, and dispatches a team to go after him. Core, meanwhile, remembering the old woman's warning, returns to Keelut only to find Alanak brutally slaughtered, with a cut to her neck, in her home. As he steps outside, several police vehicles arrive in pursuit of Vernon and Cheon. After the officers take up position around Cheon's house, Merriam goes to talk with him. He offers him an opportunity to surrender, which Cheon coldly rejects. Cheon is angry at the police for never doing their job well. He tells Miriam that they didn't care enough to come and help the people when their children disappeared, so now they have already taken it upon themselves to take their revenge. He then opens fire with an M60 machine gun. A shootout ensues, with many officers wounded and many losing their lives. The battle rages on, until Miriam sneaks into the house and finishes Cheon for good. Vernon, on the other hand, arrives at an inn near the tourist mine, where Medora was last seen. He asks the innkeeping woman about Medora, who initially hesitates, but tells him about her being there a few days earlier. She tells him that Medora came to meet John, an elderly hunter. Vernon goes to meet John, who tells him that Vernon's father once brought him there when he was a child. His father called him unnatural, and asked the hunter for wolf oil which might treat him. After a conversation with John, Vernon takes a mask from the wall and finishes him off. As he tries to flee, the innkeeper shoots Vernon in the shoulder. Good one, lady. He seeks help from his friend, Shan, who treats his wound and gives him pills to relieve the pain and make him fall asleep. Vernon falls asleep and dreams of himself and Medora in the hot springs. They have an intimate moment there. When he wakes up, Vernon overhears Shan talking to the police about him. Shan tips the police off. Vernon becomes angry at him and attacks Shan, ending his life in cold blood due to his disloyal deed. So much for being a friend. Back in Miriam's home, Miriam and his wife are having dinner. His home is filled with the aroma of a delicious dinner, and Kor can't help but feel grateful for the warm hospitality. Miriam's pregnant wife tells Kor how Miriam wishes for their child to be a boy. Miriam turns to Kor and asks him what it's like to be a father. Kor's face lights up, and he says it is amazing. Later that night, Miriam and Kor theorize that Medora went to the springs, and resolve to find her before Vernon does. The next day, Kor and Miriam fly out in a small bush plane and search the terrain north of Keelut for Medora. Kor asks why it's only them, and what about reinforcements, to which Miriam says that they had a sudden case of someone being attacked, so half of the men went there, and the other half went to search after Vernon, so that's why it's only the two of them. After a little while of flying, they spot the springs and land nearby, but their respite is short-lived. They hike into the forest, where Kor sees someone through his binoculars. At first, he can't quite make out what he is seeing, but as he focuses in, his heart sinks. He catches a glimpse of Vernon, armed with a deadly bow. He quickly turns to warn Miriam, but it's a little too late. Vernon sends an arrow down Miriam's neck, finishing him off with one blow. Kor's adrenaline spikes as he realizes the danger they are in. Frantically, Kor drags Miriam's lifeless body behind a nearby boulder, hoping to shield himself. Without a moment to lose, Kor races towards the springs, his heart pounding with fear and urgency. As he bursts into the cave, his eyes frantically search for any sign of Medora. And there she is, huddled up in a corner. He asks her to come with him, or else Vernon would come and take her life. With every second that ticks by, the threat looms larger and the need to act becomes more pressing. Before they can flee, Vernon comes in, wearing the wolf mask that he took from John, and shoots Kor in the chest with an arrow. Medora watches as Vernon comes slowly towards her. He grabs her neck and strangles Medora. She does not fight back. Instead, she slowly pushes the mask off his face, and he releases her. Both of them have teary eyes. Vernon lets go of her neck and they embrace. Kor, on the other hand, falls unconscious. After Kor awakens, Vernon comes to him, and without speaking a word, offers him a whiff of cigarette that he is smoking and removes the arrow from his chest. Medora is still alive. They both pack up, and just before leaving, Medora puts a cloth below his head, whispering to him that now he understands. Kor drags himself a little way out of the cave. The harsh cold and the unbearable pain of his chest wound make it impossible for the poor man to move any further. Before losing his entire grip on reality, he sees a pack of wolves over his body and passes out. As he becomes conscious again, he is being rescued by a son and his father. The son tells him that the wolves spared him. They bring him to a camp, where a group of old women tend to his wound. Meanwhile, Medora and Vernon go to their son's grave and dig up his coffin. They pull the coffin behind them as they trek through the snow. A little time later, we see Kor waking up in a hospital with his beloved daughter Amy by his side, who asks what happened. The movie ends with him promising his daughter that he would tell her everything.